The story of the birth of Jesus Christ is one of the most beloved and celebrated aspects of the Christian faith and the Western tradition. And one aspect of that is the story of the three wise men. According to the popular understanding, the three wise men were mystical sages from Persia or India or China who saw a magical star, and they went on their camels across a long desert trek to finally bow down and worship the Christ child and present their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This story is told and retold in Christmas nativity plays at school, on Christmas cards, in Christmas specials. It's the received version of the story of the three wise men. The story is first told, of course, by Matthew in his Gospel, and it's told in a very simple way in just a few verses. That story, though, was elaborated in the first 5 centuries of the Christian tradition for some complicated reasons, and it is that elaborate and extravagant version of the story of 3 kings, Balthazar, Melchior, and Caspar, which came down to us through the Middle Ages and through the rest of the Western Christian tradition. Scholars, Bible scholars and historians quite naturally see this magical story of a star that led the wise men across the desert as being so much pious hokum. They say, no, this story was manufactured long after the historical Jesus lived by people who wanted to make Jesus quite special. They understood that a great man needed to have a great birth and needed to have momentous things happen at his birth. And so they wove this beautiful fairy tale about the magical star and 3 wise men who came to pay homage to the King of Kings in Bethlehem and added it to the Jesus story. Well, I wondered if that was true and whether there might be a real historical basis to the story of the 3 wise men. After all, the story is told in Matthew's Gospel in a very simple and straightforward way without a lot of the elaborations that we take for granted. For instance, it doesn't say there were 3 kings. It doesn't say that they were kings. It doesn't say there were camels, and so forth. And so I began to do the research and look into the historical basis of the 3 wise men. And this is the basis of my book, The Mystery of the Magi, The Quest for the True Identity of the 3 Wise Men. What made me think about this was a visit to South Cadbury Hill Fort in England. There in Somerset is the ruins of an Iron Age fort that some historians believe might be the historical basis for Camelot, for King Arthur. If you're there at sunrise, you can look across the Somerset lowlands and you can see the mound of Glastonbury Tor rising in the distance, which they said was the mystical Isle of Avalon. And with a little bit of imagination, you can say, wow, perhaps this is where Camelot was and where King Arthur actually lived. The historians say there was a historical King Arthur, but of course, the King Arthur story was elaborated and exaggerated through the centuries, in the Middle Ages with Malory, and in the 19th century with Tennyson, and then with T.H. White's The Once and Future King, and Disney's Sword in the Stone, and a Broadway musical named Camelot, and endless TV series that keep on churning out extravagant stories about King Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot and all the rest. And those elaborate versions are far removed from the historical King Arthur, but there was a historical King Arthur. And that's the important point of my book about the 3 wise men. Although there were lots of elaborations which are difficult to believe, Matthew's story itself is quite simple. So I went back in my book, which is called The Mystery of the Magi, the historical quest for the true identity of the 3 wise men, to find where those wise men might have come from and what the reasons were for their journey. The quest was fascinating, to dig into the research and to dig into the history and the politics and the economics of the time, first century Roman Empire in Judea with King Herod the Great and with the Nabateans in nearby Arabia. And it all comes together and it clicks. It makes perfect sense. All the details fit. And you can learn more about it in my book, The Mystery of the Magi, The Quest for the True Identity of the 3 Wise Men.